Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to another edition of Ask NP Deidre with nurse practitioner Deidre Arm. She's in Ohio, and she is with us just about every week, answering your burning questions about supplements and foods and all of the above to help improve your circulation and reduce the claudication for those of you with peripheral artery disease that have that poor circulation in the legs and you get those horrible, or should I say wretched, leg cramps. Nurse practitioner Deidre has launched a sub-series as part of this grander Ask NP Deidre series, and we've been talking a lot about all of the different foods and spices and things like that, and herbs even, that can help reduce those leg cramps, especially when they're caused by poor circulation. One of the ways in which you can do that is finding those foods and spices and herbs and of course supplements as well that help to thin your blood, and that'll help the blood get through some of those narrowed arteries, especially in your legs. And today we're talking about how to spice things that are hot, things that add a lot of zest and a lot of flavor to your food, but are also going to help you improve your symptoms, particularly that claudication in your legs. So welcome, nurse practitioner Deidre. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate this topic, especially. So excited. How are we going to spice things up in this episode?
Well, we've got several things to talk about that can help with adding just flavor to your food. So that's really good, but also that will help with the vasodilation and anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties that help support circulation. So we look at foods that can help support our circulation, reduce muscle pain, and enhance your vascular health.
I love it. And you mentioned vasodilation. I know we've covered this in other topics, but what does it mean for a food to be considered a vasodilator? Why is that important?
So vasodilating just means it's promoting the blood vessel to relax, right? To improve that circulation. So, and there are, we've talked about foods in the past, but today we're going to talk about the spices and herbs that can kind of help promote that in your diet.
Okay, and we got to kick things off, of course, with cayenne pepper. I have heard so much, and I have quite a few questions about cayenne pepper in particular. And I just had a patient come to me at the Global PAD Association and said, I actually, and I didn't know this existed, that you can get cayenne pepper in capsules. Does that do any good? So let's start with why cayenne pepper? What are the properties? What makes this such an incredible addition to any meal, not just for flavor, not just to add spice, but also to help improve the blood flow and reduce those claudication symptoms?
Right. So cayenne pepper, as we know, it doesn't take a lot to pack a punch. The supplement kind of form of that, you may have heard of capsaicin, like we hear about that often. But it increases nitric oxide, which promotes the blood vessel relaxation and improves circulation. But it's also known to reduce platelet aggregation and lowers your risk for clotting as well.
And when you talk about the platelet aggregation, so I just want to put it in a different way. So there are two major types of blood thinners that are out there. You have your antiplatelets, like your aspirin, your clopidogrel or Plavix, and your Brilinta. And then on the other hand, you have your anticoagulants, and those are like your warfarin, Coumadin, Eliquis, as well as Xarelto. And the way Dr. Anita Duwa, who's been on our show quite a few times before, she's a vascular surgeon over at Mass General over in Boston, Massachusetts. She describes the differences. You have your antiplatelets. So those are like the Legos, and those antiplatelets prevent the Legos from just connecting together. And then you have the anticoagulants that they prevent the fibrin from, it's almost like the glue from gluing those pieces together into full on clots. And I'm not sure if you've heard it in that way, but that's the way she describes it.
I love that. I love that analogy totally. So,
So the cayenne pepper is the antiplatelet. It's kind of like the aspirin or the Brilinta or the Plavix and clopidogrel.
right. And you can eat it like fresh, dried cayenne, cayenne capsules. Um, Now, and we all have a different tolerance for how much cayenne we can tolerate, but to be therapeutic in the dosing, you need like a half to a teaspoon a day. And I know when I do it on like fish, I can only sprinkle a little bit for me. So it has to, for me, I'm somebody who could supplement, and that supplementing would be 500 to 1,000 milligrams per day. That's kind of researched a little bit more and like what's a therapeutic dose.
Oh wow. So they're you really need a pretty good dosage of
Right.
it. Unless, I mean, you if you think about a half a teaspoon or whatever in a day, you could really spread it out on different things. You can put it on your eggs. Usually, I like it a little bit, especially on the weekends. I'll make some scrambled eggs with some kimchi, with mushrooms and tomatoes and avocado and spinach, and then I'll add some cayenne pepper to it. And I can usually handle a little bit more because the kimchi is already spicy, so I kind of know what I'm getting into with it. So I don't mind adding a little bit of that, and then I pair it with an orange to cool things down. Um, but you can also add it what to a salad. What other ideas do you have?
So I have added it to soups. I like to add it to fish because your white fish a lot of times does not have a lot of flavor. So if you really want to spice that up, so I like to do it that way. That's probably the biggest way that I add cayenne to mine. Some people will add it into the like juicing and stuff, but that's, you know, it's however you tolerate. Like my tolerate how I tolerate spices is on this low level.
I know some of them make my nose run. I used to get ginger shots, ginger, cayenne pepper, and a little bit of turmeric, and so cayenne and some lemon. Wow, that would make my nose run.
Yeah.
What's that spicy? Oh, and my eyes water too.
Yeah.
And I
And
know
so,
that Mike actually, he's here in a live studio audience in Canada. Mike, do you want to? I see you smiling. You're dying to get something in here. Do you want to comment, or do you have a question for nurse practitioner Deidre in regards to cayenne pepper?
No, it was just because I brought it up. I think it was either last week or the week before. A friend of mine, for the last maybe 12 months, she's been t trying to tell me take a shot of cayenne pepper every single day, and I've been like, no, I can't do it. I can't. I didn't research it. I didn't know what it did for your system. But now hearing Deirdre and hearing yourself and stuff, I'm like smiling to myself, thinking maybe I should have took Donna up on a advice 12 months ago about taking a shot of cayenne pepper every day. Obviously, I probably still won't, but it's there so that I know that it's healthy for you now, and it's not just something that I was just worried that it might do something to me inside with it being such a spicy, yeah, and down your esophagus as well. I didn't know whether it could affect that if it's taken too much of, or so. Yeah, I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I'm almost wondering, nurse practitioner Deidre, if for those people especially that have Crohn's disease, other issues with their colon, diverticulitis, is this something that can be tolerated in your experience?
so in that realm, I would usually say probably do the capsules or something, the supplementation of it. But if that's not the spice for you, we still have some others that will help with vasodilation and anti-clotting, especially like garlic, and that can be much more mild for people.
But I'm curious with the cayenne before we get into the garlic is for example, as soon as we started thinking about doing this particular episode, I have had a cayenne pepper jar in my cabinet for like 3 years. And I'm thinking, maybe it's no longer as potent as it could be if I got it literally just recently, or if I found a more natural source or more fresh source, I would say online. Does the time that you have it, the shelf time, make a difference in the quality or the potency of the cayenne pepper that you would have, let's say, in a jar that you're sprinkling things on?
Actually a really good question. Most of the time, like the dried sources and things like that will last about 18 months to 3 years, depending on how fresh you have it. So usually I'm looking at if you have it within a few years, yeah, like that's the best, the most potent. I don't know how far something has to be out to be considered like not effective if we're trying to work with increasing like nitric oxide and relaxing the vessels. I don't know how after the 18 months to 2 years it starts to decrease, like how fast.
Yeah, I mean, just it might be different with, for example, with olive oil. In olive oil, you should consume, it should be bottled and consumed within 6 months, but it can last up to a year. It just starts losing its potency in terms of the antioxidant punch over the course of time. What about garlic? Garlic, I just went, you would be so proud of me today. I served my dad a Caesar salad, made the dressing fresh, and I literally took the garlic and I minced it in my little garlic mincer myself. And so I had fresh garlic in there, and I put an entire garlic into this, two servings of dressing, one for my dad and one for me. So, thankfully, maybe, my boyfriend doesn't live here. So with that, or else I'd have to serve it to him too.
Yeah, so garlic, it helps widen blood vessels, right? It helps improve that arterial flexibility. I think that I see more people use that in their spices, right? Onions, garlics, those are something that we're cooking a lot more with and a little more palatable, especially if you're not somebody who really likes spices. Um, but it's one of my favorites to cook with also. Like I always have fresh garlic available.
So is it the same thing? I mean, garlic powder versus fresh garlic? I mean, you say that cayenne pepper versus the fresh, actual pepper. I mean, are they similar in terms of potency, or are you just always going to say, well, fresh is always better?
Well, when we get into when you're using something fresh, like the actual clove, you need about 1 to 2 of those a day to be like appropriate dosing for what you're trying to do. When we get into the powders, it's more concentrated, so you could use less. Yeah, because when you think of the garlic powder, you don't, it's less of that to equal 1 to 2 cloves a day. When we get into supplementing, and it's often called alicillin when you're supplementing. So if you're reading a label of supplement and it says has alicillin in it, that's garlic and garlic extract. And so usually around 600 to 1200 milligrams of that a day is optimum.
And when is the best time to take some of these supplements? Is it, um, for example, when you're taking, blood thinners, they always say to take it at a certain time, or, taking like iron supplements, better to take them in the morning when you have it with, a cup of orange juice or an orange or some other citrus. Is there any best practice to take these types of supplements?
Really, it depends on each one of them, their absorption, how they're metabolized, and everything. So the cayenne pepper, before your meals or in the morning. And why would you do that? Because it helps to boost metabolism and circulation. But some people on an empty stomach could really have some irritation with that. So you'd really want, if you have a more sensitive stomach, you really wouldn't want to do that, but that's the best time. And then with the garlic or alicillin on an empty stomach as well, because the raw garlic is the most effective on an empty stomach. But the ones that are aged, that garlic extract that's aged can be taken with food if it causes discomfort.
Okay, should we go on to turmeric? Turmeric's one of my favorite, except the problem with turmeric is it stains absolutely everything, whether it's glass, whether it's metal, whether it's plastic. I mean, everything. And I think we've even had the story I shared where I stained the carpet and had to repaint which I didn't realize you can paint carpet, strip it and paint it. I had to do so.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. So, turmeric is actually one of the most studied herbs out there. It really helps with chronic inflammation, and it helps with kind of blocking some of those inflammatory drivers for arterial disease as well. And we use it often for reducing oxidative stress, but it's it is used for everything. Turmeric is like there's so much anti-inflammatory properties like packed into turmeric, and when you combine that with ginger, you're really boosting mitochondrial and helping your energy production as well.
And with turmeric, I mean, so that's probably one that you would say, okay, really, really focus on taking the supplement.
To get the full dose, because when you're looking at it, like if you're taking it fresh turmeric root or the powder or supplementing, in food you need 1 to 3 grams, which can be about a half to a teaspoon per day. When you supplement it, really to get that therapeutic, it's oftentimes 500 to 1,000 milligrams a day, and sometimes even more than that if you're working with a provider. Just be mindful that black pepper helps with better absorption of turmeric as well. And so I actually have an old dog that I sprinkle turmeric in his food, her food every day.
Really?
Yeah.
And do we notice a difference or do we just have to hope that that it's making a difference on the inside?
So I have noticed it in many of my patients. I had a woman who was 90 years old with rheumatoid arthritis, and the only thing she ever took was high dose turmeric. And her hands were crippled, and she could still get out in her garden and garden every day. It was the only thing that helped the inflammation and helped her. So I've seen it in those extremes. I have patients all the time who will say they have like inflammation in their knee or they're noticing joint pain, and you know they're always looking for options. And turmeric usually can really do the trick when it comes to inflammation as well. And I always want to say, though, we cannot out supplement a bad diet. So you can't just be like, this herb is going to take the place of all the carbs and all the sugar that I'm eating. It has to be in conjunction with. So, and the best time to take that is with your meals, especially ones that contain like healthy fats. So like your avocado and turmeric or curcumin. So you might have heard it both ways, is fat soluble. So food actually enhances it.
What is the fancy name for black pepper? So when you're looking at the bottle, it doesn't say black pepper. It usually says something else.
Uh,
Is that
yeah,
biopairing?
piperine.
Piperine.
Yeah, and I'm probably saying it wrong. So
Piperine. So just make sure you're looking at what is the biopairing that I see with it. Mine actually is paired with biopairing.
ooh.
Is that is that it? Is that just the fancy um is that the fancy word for
It is. It's a
okay,
patent form of piperine.
gotcha. Okay, that's what I want to make sure. I was kind of assuming that's what it was. Um So, and if you want to actually consume some turmeric and get a little, extra anti-inflammatory punch, we've talked about this before on the show as well. There's an anti-inflammatory tea. You can look at our YouTube page, youtube.com/ the @ sign, the way to my heart. And there is we actually coach you through making this anti-inflammatory tea. It honestly takes you 5 to 10 minutes to cut everything up and throw it into a pot, but you take the skin of the pineapple, cut up some orange, cut up some lemon, cut up some turmeric, cut up some ginger, add some black pepper, a little bit of cayenne, and you just throw it all into a big pot. And you don't have to worry about taking any of the skin off. Just scrub it before you put them in there so you can get some of the pesticides and things off. But then you boil it and you're going to leave it sit until it cools, and then you'll drain it. And it's a wonderful, you can have it hot, you can have it cold, and it really helps you with your hydration, your fluid intake. So those of you who don't like to drink plain water all day long, this is a good option to flavor your water and also get that anti-inflammatory punch as well every day. So what else do we got? What about cinnamon? Cinnamon is such a great way to flavor the food, and it can also, I hear, lower the A1C as well, help with the glucose control.
Yeah, cinnamon really helps with blood sugar as well. But for the kind of reducing the inflammation part of it, it does reduce the arterial stiffness as well. And it helps hugely regulate glucose metabolism. A lot of the supplements that you have in the, space of supplementing that has to do with weight loss even has cinnamon in it.
And every once in a while, I'll take the Ceylon cinnamon capsules. And there was a study that I read. There's actually a study out there that shows it clinically reduces the A1C, and it can also, um, less so, but it can also help with cholesterol levels as well. But you've got to do it 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off. When I do it 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and I do it 30 minutes before I eat in the morning. But it's really important because it can build up. I think it's in the liver that you need to give your body a break in between doses, right?
Yeah, a lot of things you have to give a little bit of break from things as well. And how that would improve things is, it improves insulin sensitivity. So that can really help with your cholesterol levels as well when we
So we
improve insulin.
so we have some questions coming in. It looks like we have Stefan who is concerned that garlic can be considered toxic. Are there times or ways in which garlic can become toxic for certain individuals or with too much consumption?
That's a good question.
I've
And
never heard that before.
I'm wondering if it has to do with, how we've had the talk about chocolates also having like heavy metals, things like that. Some things like, is it because it's grown in the ground type thing, or?
I don't know. I mean, garlic, I mean, it's toxic to dogs. We know that.
Mhm.
But I've never seen anything in terms of it being, toxic to humans. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to Google it and just see what
I
it
know with
says. And it actually,
blood
the only thing that comes up is toxicity in dogs.
Yeah, and with blood thinners, right, because it's a natural blood thinning property, it can increase that bleeding risk. So if somebody was taking warfarin or aspirin or Plavix, right, you might definitely want to talk to your doctor, especially like eating these foods are a little bit different than when we supplement in these high doses. Um,
And you do want to make sure, as we always remind you in anything, is there is too much of a good thing, and you do need to make sure. I think with anything, if you have too much of it, if you're overdoing it, you're not dosing in a normal fashion, as per the instructions and in coordination with your own care plan that has been provided by your healthcare team. Anything can be too much of a good thing, and you can get that. Um, you can get liver damage from a lot of these different, supplements. And so we were talking about even the Ceylon cinnamon. It's the same thing with garlic. So everything in moderation. And you don't want to, after this episode, go out and say, okay, well, I'm going to start garlic. I'm going to start turmeric. I'm going to start ginger. I'm going to start the cinnamon. I'm going to start and start and start and start. You don't want to do all of these at once. You really do need to sit down with a dietitian, with a nutritionist, with your care team, and even more importantly, with your pharmacist, and actually say, okay, are there any interactions that are bad with these particular supplements and these particular medications I'm on? That is incredibly important. This is what we're providing is just for educational, informational purposes only. Do not take any advice offered here. unless you have explicit consent from your own healthcare team. That's really important. But when it comes to just natural eating of these foods, it's hard to say that you would get any sort of toxic dosage. If you're allergic to them, that's also something to be very careful of. But I think that, you know, if you want to play it safe, just go ahead and just incorporate these foods into your diet naturally. Food is medicine. It is the best medicine. It is the best way. And as nurse practitioner Deidre just said a few moments ago, none of this is a replacement for a bad diet. You can't go and start eating chocolate donuts and cakes and carbs and all this stuff and think that just because you're taking these supplements that you're going to suddenly be healthy and have no inflammation. Nurse practitioner Deidre, that's not the case, right?
It's not the case. And it's actually a cumulative of all the small little changes we make in our diet and what we're doing for our lifestyle. Garlic in general is considered safe, but you could get into a problem if you have GI issues, if you're on blood thinners and you're doing the high doses. But generally safe in the way that we cook and everything, more tolerated than some of the spicier spices as well. But really, it's the cumulative of what you are all doing for your health, those little changes consistently over time, and how we eat and how we can improve our health. It's really impactful.
And we have Ross that she just wanted to add a side note that foods like spinach and beetroot contain nitrates from nitrates. Is she talking about, is that the nitric oxide you were talking about, or this is not my thing? She said they contain nitrates that relax the blood vessels, promoting better circulation as well. And we had talked about this before.
With the nitric oxide and everything.
The nitric oxide.
Yeah.
And that's what's really good about those. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's good. So Christine, she says, can you, she wants to know where we can get that tea recipe. She missed where he said it. So the tea recipe for the anti-inflammatory tea, you can search if you are a part of our Facebook groups. We do have Facebook groups as well. And I think the Facebook group is padsupportgroup.com. I think that's what it is, or padsupportgroup.org. And you can search for the anti-inflammatory tea in there, or else you can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/the @ the way to my heart, and the anti-inflammatory tea recipe you can search for on there as well. We have an entire fun video of me not so professionally cutting those fruits and such and throwing them into the pot. So yeah, if you want to see an amateur at best do it, that's me, and you can go ahead and take that. And then we have someone else under the emblem T. How are the capsules compared to the spice itself as far as dosage? I wonder if it will cause stomach problems when taken in capsule form as well. That was Lori.
Which one are we talking about? Like cayenne pepper, like the capsaicin?
Either that or the garlic. I mean, you were mentioning that there's some stomach upset potentially with whether it's the cayenne pepper or the garlic.
Right. And sometimes I'll tell people like start with the lower dose, see how you do. If you do have a more sensitive stomach, you can always take it with food. That's how, like if you're supplementing as well, and start a little bit lower. I have cayenne pepper to me, like hands down, it doesn't take much for me to notice that I've had it. So your ginger is another one where people may notice that one being a little, although ginger is great for an upset stomach, they may feel that if they have acid reflux that it can cause
I was wondering with the ginger capsules, if I should take them, because sometimes I do get a little bit of an upset stomach at night, and I wonder, but the ginger capsules that I've been using, and they say they're ginger root, organic ginger root, but as you know, the different brands have different effectiveness, and we're going to get to those brands in a moment, but I don't feel like the ginger root that I take at night does absolutely anything after the meal. And I feel like ginger root should have some sort of a reduction in the, acid that you have or the upset stomach following a meal. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, it should really help with upset stomach. Sometimes, though, if you're taking ginger and that's not the case, it oftentimes could be digestion and enzymes being part of that as well. But ginger, it works really well with lowering that C-reactive protein. So that inflammatory marker there. So you're getting inflammation, and then it's hugely known to help like nausea, and all the upset belly stuff. But if it doesn't help like stomach, then I would say there's probably another kind of more root cause thing that's probably doing that.
So, PT on YouTube. Thank you, Joshua, our YouTube producer, for passing this along. PT, what do you think about nutritional yeast? And although it's not, spicing things up, it's adding a little bit of cheesiness, a little savoriness. But I will tell you, nurse practitioner Deidre, my first time using nutritional yeast, I regret not knowing how to use it. I added so much of it that I literally thought that my stomach was a balloon and it was going to pop. It was so upset. I had so many cramps and I just literally could not button pants at all. I felt so bloated. So I would say nutritional yeast, be a little bit aware and cautious about how much you use.
Right, because it kind of has the Saccharomyces family in it of probiotics, so it's deactivated yeast. And when you get a bloat with something like that, you probably need to use much lower of a dose for sure, and kind of work your way into that. You can sprinkle, though, it on foods and soups and salads. You're right, it does have that little cheesy, nutty flavor to help kind of boost the nutrients and everything. But 2 tablespoons a day for circulation and claudication can be helpful.
Oh, wow. And lots of B vitamins I hear in nutritional yeast as well, which we talk about B vitamins having a great impact. We have doctors that prescribe them for neuropathy in the feet. And so, a little bit of extra B never hurts anyone, right?
Right, and it's rich in niacin, so that's your B3, and then B6. And I always say B6 is really good because if we think about like our neurotransmitters and our serotonin, so B6 is kind of that, you need B6 to kind of help with that neurotransmitters. And so folate, all of those, not only does it improve blood flow, and circulation claudication, but it's hugely helpful for mood.
Are there any, I like that. If it can help with the mood, that's perfect. Because also when you're in pain, it can really affect your mood. So anything that can help boost it and kind of overcome the challenges that you face mentally with the debilitating and wretched PED pain, that is awesome. So, any other spices, any other ways to kind of jazz things up that can help improve circulation and ultimately reduce the claudication in your legs?
Yeah, so you talked about using ginger for anti-inflammatory, and ginger is really something that is great. And then lastly, I had on my little list the ginkgo biloba, because we haven't really talked about that one, right?
No, I've never heard of it as like something that could jazz up my food, or I mean, I've seen it in drinks, in the sugary flavored section of the supermarket, but or the ginkgo biloba tea, unsweet. I know there is some unsweetened iced tea that you can get, but tell us a little bit more because I didn't know this was something that could help with circulation.
Right, so it can help by improving capillary perfusion. So it increases oxygen supply to the muscle, right? And it can reduce oxidative damage that's that contributes to like fatigue. So ginkgo biloba is really a good kind of thing to be adding in. And tea or standardized supplements would be the way that you would get ginkgo biloba for sure.
What can I ask what it actually is?
Um,
I mean, I can visualize ginger, I can visualize turmeric, I can visualize a cayenne pepper. Um, I'm not sure that I can really visualize a ginkgo biloba. I've
um,
never Googled it, so of course I can Google it, but I can't at the moment. So,
right.
what is it?
Yeah, so it's kind of a fan-shaped leaf, and it's bright green in color, and it can turn to kind of a yellow in the fall. So,
And is it more like an herb?
yeah, it's what we call an ancient medicinal tree, right? Yeah. So, um,
So what would something, I mean, look like? Because obviously, we can't take, and I mentioned this earlier, but we can't take, I mean, with everything that you've been mentioning, the turmeric, the cayenne, the garlic, the ginkgo biloba, all of the above. I mean, that's how many, that's already two, four, six, eight. I think with everything we've discussed, that would be 10 capsules
yeah, and
a
we don't want
day. And you don't want to do that. So with some of them, there's a little bit of overlap, right? So what would be if you could have your top two to three that you would incorporate? And maybe it is, maybe you don't do the full two capsules, right? And of course, again, check with your healthcare team as to whether supplementation is right for you and which supplementations are right for you as well. It's different if it's just simply you're going to take the food route and you're going to do food as medicine, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I was just curious on the supplement side, what your two or three favorites would be if you were going to pick the supplements.
I would hands down pick turmeric and capsaicin.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then kind of little ways that you can add spices kind of to your diet. You know, the anti-inflammatory teas and things. You can add many of these things into one thing. Golden milk is another one. Adding it to, like you said, to your garlic and olive oil dressing.
So I love the idea of, okay, you're like, okay, the capsaicin and the turmeric would be the capsules. Of course, it's so easy to add garlic to all of our different foods throughout the day, the salad dressings, salads, fish, whatever it might be. And then the ginkgo biloba could be, there are iced teas that you can get and you can make them at home with the tea bags and just put them in the fridge. And actually, when you take your turmeric capsules, you can wash them down with some ginkgo biloba tea.
Yeah, exactly.
And even you can wash it down with our anti-inflammatory tea, which includes ginger. So you can have different flavored waters. Just in our refrigerator, we have um, big jugs, glass jars that we just make every single week on a Sunday. We just make a different type of iced tea or a flavored water that includes some of these anti-inflammatory ingredients. And as I say, you can spice it up and make it different every single week. And it takes literally just a few minutes to cut things up, put a few tea bags in there, and then let it cool and put it in the jars and in the fridge. And it's a great way to just also increase that the fluid intake that you need, throughout the day. And you're getting that extra anti-inflammatory punch. And I love with that ginkgo biloba, and I think that that's worth repeating for those who are even just tuning in, because that's not something that I have heard before. And for those patients, especially that have issues with the capillaries, the small vessels that branch off of the main arteries, especially in the feet. And if you have wounds that aren't healing and you're dependent, let's say the doctor opens up those arteries and you're just really dependent upon those capillaries. What do you think, nurse practitioner Deidre? Do you think that it's worth a little ginkgo biloba tea just to
I
see if it'll help?
I do. There was in the Journal of Cardiovascular Pharmacology in 2013, they did a study on ginkgo biloba and how it increased pain-free walking distance by 20 to 30% in people with PAD. So,
What?
yeah,
Are you kidding?
no,
So why isn't this something that is more mainstream? Because what's interesting to me is that they just released, it's all over. If you look up PAD, peripheral artery disease, under the news, almost every single one of the news items is all about this new STRIDE trial where they're talking about the
semaglutide.
semaglutide,
Yeah,
Ozempic, Wegovy, those GLP-1, that's so much easier for me to say, um, drugs. And they had a huge trial, more than 1,000 patients, and they showed a significant reduction in claudication and improved walking distance in patients that were on those particular weight loss and diabetes drugs. And they were talking about not having any sort of major breakthrough in medications for this since cilostazol. And cilostazol, as you know, is a vasodilator. We've talked about it before on this episode, and that is part of the 2024 PAD guidelines here in the United States, that it's supposed to be used or prescribed for patients to help reduce claudication and improve the walking distance. But I had never had anyone mention anything about ginkgo biloba, and I wonder if it's because it's not a prescription drug, for number one, and number two is, despite where it was published, do they consider that a small trial, or is that was that a pretty large study? Because that can also make a difference,
right.
and just simply why it wasn't more mainstream.
Yeah, I could pull it and probably send it to you and look at it and see what it. But oftentimes when it's herbal things, we don't hear it mainstream. Like we have to be digging for it.
Or it'll take a while, and the pharmaceutical companies will say, that's interesting. I wonder if I could create a prescription strength ginkgo biloba that we could ultimately sell. I mean, if you look at it, statins, what's the main ingredient? Red yeast rice.
I mean,
So
there's a lot of natural things used in
yeah.
these pharmaceuticals.
I love that. So is there anything that we are missing? I'm kind of taking a look to see if we're missing any of the questions. Hello to Robert Castleberry and Patty, and we have quite a few people, Patricia and Christine and Roz and Stefan and Lori. Thank you so much for joining in on social media. We have quite a few people out there. If there are any last minute questions, make sure to get them into the comment section right there. A thank you to Mike and Heinz. And I don't know who iPhone 41 is, but thank you for being here as well. And a big thank you to our YouTube producer, Josh. Heinz or Mike, any insights or questions while you have nurse practitioner Deidre here on how to personalize the information that she has offered for your own diet plan?
No, not from me. I think I'm good. Thank you. I've just been listening along. I've been taking notes and writing things down. So I've got a little list now going of things that I'm learning about. So thanks for that, Deirdre.
You're welcome.
I love that. Is there anything in particular that you're ready? I have a feeling, Mike, that you're going to go straight after the cayenne pepper. That's what I have a feeling.
Yeah, I think I am. I think I'm going to give that a go. I think that might be the first thing. I do eat not a lot of garlic, but I do incorporate garlic into some of my meals anyway. So yeah, Geordie's just said he eats more of it than he actually thinks. But
As long as you're both eating it, that's what counts. That's
yeah,
key.
yeah.
And I know that
So
we have Robert that is joining in. He is the founder of Pad Life Outdoors, and people can follow his channel on YouTube as well. And we're going to be broadcasting live, whether he knows it or not, tomorrow when we actually are interviewing the lead investigator in that STRIDE trial on the GLP-1 drugs and their impact on walking as medicine. And the improved walking with them. And we're actually going to broadcast on his channel, actually multiple channels tomorrow, because it's a really big deal. So hopefully people will tune into that. But with Robert and his Pad Life Outdoors, he's always wondering, is there anything in terms of these types of anti-inflammatory or circulation increasing food items that would be great on the go for people who are going camping, they're out on the trails, they need snacks. Any ideas for those um, types of situations, whether it's with the garlic or the turmeric, or I can give you one. What I do for my dad for his snacks on the go is I create a little bag of raw nuts, and I add a little bit of garlic, I add a little bit of onion powder, and I add a little bit of cayenne, and I shake them up. And he absolutely loves it. So adds a little bit of spice. He doesn't miss the salt because the garlic and the onion powder seem to kind of replace that. And then you get the little kick with the cayenne.
And I like when I'm like camping, things like that. You know, I even add cinnamon to things like cottage cheese or Greek yogurt, or like if you tolerate dairy things, but adding a little bit of cinnamon to something like that as a snack when you're camping, because we're looking for things that can be you can pack, you can make put in small containers, things like that. And so cinnamon is a good one for that.
And for cinnamon, that reminded me. So another option might be if you're going camping, you bring a little bit of that really good, maybe avocado oil, and you can sprinkle cinnamon. So spray the olive oil on the skin of the fish, and then sprinkle some cinnamon and some nutmeg on the back. And oh, it's great for grilling. It's so delicious. So that is definitely an option as well for those of you who are outdoors men and women. So thank you so much, Nurse Practitioner Deidre. I so appreciate you being here. We're going to continue on this track. We're not going to be meeting next week. We'll be meeting the week of the 14th. So that would be the 16th. So were we good for that, Nurse Practitioner Deidre?
Yeah.
Okay. So definitely make sure you subscribe to our channels, youtube.com/@the @ Deidre. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to her channel, and you'll get notified when we have new episodes such as this. You can also subscribe to the Global PAD Association's channel at youtube.com/@ the way to my heart. The way to my heart is our 501(c)(3), and we're doing business as the Global PAD Association. But don't forget also to like this video, and make sure if you've watched this video and you have more questions about this topic, go ahead and get them in comments. We'll gather them and we'll address them on the 16th. But we appreciate you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and especially to you, Nurse Practitioner Deidre.